Here is a summary of the news and publications that appeared on the Focus on Business portal in March 2026.
And there's a whole lot to unpack in this month's data.
There really is. I mean, we're doing a deep dive today into some seriously conflicting trends. But before we get into the heavy macroeconomics, I want you to just imagine a scenario for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
So imagine you post a job opening for your team. You need someone, fast. You hit publish on the listing. You go grab a quick coffee. And by the time you sit back down at your desk, your inbox is already pinging.
Right, the immediate dopamine hit.
Exactly. And within 72 hours, you have 300 resumes sitting in your queue. Now, if you're a hiring manager, this might sound like an absolute dream scenario, right? Like a complete buffet of top-tier talent.
It sounds great on paper, yeah.
But the reality is, this exact scenario is currently tearing HR departments apart. I mean, completely overwhelming them. Welcome to the era of application inflation.
Application inflation, yeah, it's brutal.
It is. And that is just one of the massive sort of structural paradoxes we're seeing in the global business landscape right now. We're looking at an economy that is moving so incredibly fast, it is practically breaking its own systems.
It is a really remarkable tension.
Yeah.
Because, we are seeing this unprecedented digital acceleration, but it's colliding directly with physical and regulatory bottlenecks.
Which is exactly what we are going to untangle today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are taking a massive stack of March 2026 business news, executive surveys, and real estate reports straight from the sources, and our mission today is to synthesize all of it into a single cohesive narrative.
Right, because it can all feel so scattered.
Exactly. We're trying to figure out how all these seemingly disconnected pieces, from the macro optimism of U.S. executives to the changing nature of AI startups, all the way down to the physical logistics boom in Poland and the complex financial compliance engines, keeping it all running, how they all actually fit together.
Because they do fit together. When you look closely at the underlying data, the hiring metrics, the actual leases being signed, you realize the global economy isn't just this neat little binary of booming or busting.
Right.
It's a highly complex, interconnected web of adaptations.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start way up high at the 30,000-foot macroeconomic view, because the data we are seeing right now is legitimately surprising.
It is, yeah.
I'm looking at the latest Economic Outlook survey from the AICPA and CIMA, and for anyone unfamiliar, that's the American Institute of CPAs and the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants.
The folks who actually run the numbers.
Precisely. They survey the C-suite, the CFOs, the CEOs, the people actually controlling the corporate purse strings in the United States. And according to their latest numbers, business leaders are feeling aggressively optimistic.
The jump in sentiment is what really stands out to me. Optimism about the U.S. economy for the next 12 months has surged to 39%.
Which is huge.
Right now, 39% might not sound like a sweeping majority to a layperson, but you have to look at the context here. That is up from 28% just in the previous quarter.
Wow.
Yeah, an 11-point jump in a single quarter is a massive swing in how risk is being perceived at the absolute highest levels of corporate governance.
Right, because these aren't people prone to irrational exuberance. They are literally accountants.
Exactly.
And the hard projections back up their feelings. They are projecting revenue growth of 2.9% across the board, which is up from 2%. Even more tellingly, profit expectations have effectively doubled, jumping from 0.8% to 1.6%.
It's a very solid foundation.
But here's the detail that really caught my eye. If you look at the news over the last, 3 years, inflation has been the absolute monster under the bed. It's all anyone talked about. But in this survey, inflation concerns have plummeted.
Completely dropped us.
Yeah, it dropped to 5th place on their list of executive worries.
Which is the pivotal data point of the entire survey, honestly. When inflation drops to 5th place, it signals that the existential dread of macroeconomic instability is finally fading.
Right, they aren't panicked anymore.
Exactly. Executives are no longer playing defense against global currency devaluation. Instead, they are pivoting to offense. They are looking inward at domestic economic conditions. Specifically, they are obsessing over workforce availability and benefits costs. The mindset has shifted from how do we survive this macroeconomic storm, to how do we optimize our internal operational efficiency to capture this new growth.
And the survey notes that 55% of respondents now expect their businesses to actively grow and expand.
Yeah, which is a total sea change.
But that growth isn't taking the traditional path, is it? While established executives are feeling this surge of optimism, the very nature of building a new business, the fundamental entrepreneurial journey, is completely mutating.
Oh, absolutely.
We have this fascinating analysis from Achilles Georgiou that dropped recently, discussing how artificial intelligence has dragged entrepreneurship to a massive crossroads.
Yes, and this requires us to fundamentally rethink the whole Silicon Valley mythology. I mean, for the last 4 decades, the entrepreneurial dream has been rooted in pure, unadulterated independence.
The garage to Google myth.
Exactly. The narrative has always been that you and your co-founder can build a disruptive piece of software in a basement, challenge the massive incumbents, and operate completely outside the established systems of corporate power.
But Georgiou argues that the AI era has structurally destroyed that premise. I mean, think about the essential infrastructure you need to build a competitive AI product today. You need massive, eye-watering compute power.
Yep.
You need access to foundation models. You need colossal data pipelines and incredibly robust cloud storage. And who controls literally all of those things? It's big tech. It's Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon.
Right. And if we look at the historical precedent, this is a radical departure from the dot-com era. When the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s, the underlying infrastructure of the internet, the protocols, the basic connectivity, survived and remained relatively open and decentralized.
Right. Anyone could jump in.
Anyone could build a website on open source tools and reach a global audience. But in the AI era, you aren't just entering a free market, you are building your entire business inside someone else's proprietary operating environment.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Your business's viability depends entirely on their API access, their pricing tier decisions, and the governance rules set by, a handful of corporate giants.
It makes me think of a physical analogy. Tell me if this tracks. Building an independent AI startup today feels like opening a beautiful high-end boutique inside a massive shopping mall owned by big tech.
Okay, I like this.
You might have an amazing product on your shelves. You might have a beautiful storefront. But at the end of the day, you don't control the foot traffic. You don't control the rent, which in this case is the API calls.
Right. And the mall owner can change the rules of the mall overnight. Even worse, if your boutique becomes wildly successful, the mall owner have the capital and the data visibility to just launch their own generic first-party version of your product and place it right by the mall's main entrance.
That is a highly accurate and honestly rather chilling analogy for the modern founder. And to push that analogy further, the mall owner also provides you with tools that make building your storefront incredibly fast.
So fast.
AI has practically eliminated the traditional technical barriers to entry. Turning an idea into a minimum viable product, an MVP, used to take a team of engineers months, if not years, of grueling coding. Now, leveraging existing large language models, it takes days. Sometimes it literally takes hours.
Which, on the surface, sounds like a utopia for the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You have an idea on Friday, and you have a working prototype by Monday.
It sounds like a utopia until you realize the dark side of that velocity. If building a product is frictionless and easy for you, copying that product is equally frictionless and easy for your competitors. Oh, right, because they have the same AI tools.
Exactly. In the previous tech generation, the first mover advantage gave a startup 6 to 12 months of breathing room. You had a moat simply because the technology was hard to build. That allowed you to capture market share, secure venture capital.
Sure.
Today, that first mover advantage has effectively shrunk to a matter of days. Execution speed is critical, but defensibility, the actual ability to protect your intellectual property and innovation from being immediately replicated, is incredibly hard to sustain.
So if pure independent disruption from the garage is becoming nearly impossible and your product can be cloned in a week, what are these optimistic executives and founders actually doing? How are they surviving this?
They are shifting the fundamental metrics of success. Georgiou's article highlights a massive move away from traditional ROI, return on investment, toward a new paradigm, which is ROTI, return on time invested. Right. In an environment where development cycles have collapsed to near zero, the primary question isn't just how much money an idea will yield over 5 years. The question is how fast an idea can be validated, deployed, and integrated into existing workflows.
Which brings us to the rise of entrepreneurship.
Precisely. Large established corporations are no longer sitting back, waiting to be disrupted by two kids in a garage. They recognize their inherent advantages.
They have all the cards.
They do. They have the financial resources, they have proprietary internal data that startups can't access, and most importantly, they already have massive captive customer bases. They're utilizing AI to rapidly test ideas internally.
Interesting.
They're becoming venture builders within their own walls, sometimes intentionally disrupting their own legacy products before a competitor can do it. For a founder today, the most realistic, lucrative path to scale often isn't trying to beat big tech at their own game.
Because you can't.
You really can't.
Yeah.
It is domain-specific collaboration. It is building what Jorda calls human-AI hybrid ventures that plug directly into existing corporate ecosystems.
Okay, this is a huge paradigm shift. But it begs a geographical question. If global executives are optimistic, but AI is forcing startups to abandon pure disruption in favor of deep domain-specific collaboration with existing industries, where is the actual groundwork for this happening?
Well, right, because it's not all happening in California.
Exactly. It can't all be happening on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is great at building the foundational models, but they don't know the first thing about, say, optimizing a European steel mill.
And that is exactly where the global narrative splinters. The infrastructure of the AI era, the massive data centers, the foundation models might be heavily centralized in the hands of a few tech giants, but the application of that technology, the gritty, real-world, domain-specific problem-solving, is heavily decentralized.
Yeah.
We are witnessing the explosive rise of incredibly dynamic regional tech hubs globally.
And I want to jump right into one of those hubs because the transformation is staggering. Let's look at Poland, specifically the Silesia region. There was a major conference held in Katowice in March, organized by Pro Progressio, titled R&D and AI in 2026.
The overarching theme of that conference was Transformation 4.0.
Right. And to understand the weight of that, you have to know what Silesia is. This is historically a heavy industry region: coal mining, steel. Transformation 1.0 is the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, very traditional industry.
Now, they are moving to a modern, tech-driven economy. They are literally building the Katowice Gaming and Technology Hub on top of post-mining land. But what struck me about the reports from this conference is that it wasn't just a bunch of futurists giving TED Talks.
Right, they're actually doing the work.
Exactly. They are executing real-world, heavy-duty AI implementations. For example, there is a company called DBR77. They created a digital twin for the defense industry.
We should clarify what a digital twin entails in this context, because the term is often misused.
Yeah, go for it.
It is not merely a slick 3D visualization or a CAD model. A true digital twin is a fully integrated virtual replica of physical production and logistics processes. It takes live IoT data sensors on the factory floor, machine operation speeds, worker movement patterns, and feeds them into a simulated environment where AI can run thousands of optimization scenarios per minute.
And the results they shared at the conference are wild. By running these AI simulations on the digital twin before moving a single physical machine, DBR77 was able to reduce work-in-progress inventory by 25%.
That's massive.
It is. They optimized the physical floor space by 12%, and ultimately they increased overall production efficiency by 30% in just 6 weeks. They got a complete return on their financial investment in less than a year.
That is the literal definition of return on time investment.
And exactly. And it's not just manufacturing. Look at another company from the region, SAIO. They are attacking the administrative side. They are moving shared services away from those clunky old Excel macros we've all suffered through and toward advanced autonomous AI agents.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. They showcased a project involving ESG reporting, environmental, social, and governance reporting. We all know these reports are absolute nightmares.
The worst.
They are taking PDF documents that are up to 500 pages long, full of dense regulatory language and tables. SAIO integrated Google's Gemini model to analyze these PDFs, and they cut the processing time from 3 manual hours down to just a few minutes.
What is truly fascinating about both DBR77 and SAIO is their extreme pragmatism.
Yeah.
Neither of these companies is trying to build a new foundational large language model to compete with OpenAI or Anthropic. That would be a fool's errand.
Right. Total waste of time.
Instead, they are taking the existing centralized AI infrastructure, the mall, to use your analogy, and applying it to highly complex, localized, unglamorous industrial problems.
But there was a stark warning at that conference, too. Marcin Nowak spoke on a panel and pointed out that the European tech gap with the United States is currently estimated at 800 billion euros. 800 billion.
Yes, and that number should terrify European policymakers. You cannot close an 800 billion euro gap by simply chasing the leaders. If you try to build a European version of ChatGPT right now, you are already 5 years too late.
You'll never catch up.
Never. To close that gap, regions like Silesia must find highly specialized niches like defense manufacturing optimization or complex regulatory automation where they can entirely leapfrog the competition.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though. With that massive 800 billion euro sword hanging over everyone's head and the intense pressure to implement AI just to survive, aren't we seeing a massive wave of AI washing?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, I'm looking at another detail from that Carewice panel regarding the commercialization of scientific research. The panelists were openly criticizing the bureaucracy in academia and government grants. They pointed out that the grant systems are essentially forcing researchers and startups to artificially slap the label AI-powered onto their projects just to secure funding, even if traditional software would solve the problem better.
Your skepticism is entirely warranted. That is a very real systemic risk. The sheer panic to innovate often leads to superficial applications AI for the sake of AI, rather than AI for the sake of business utility.
Right.
When funding mechanisms prioritize buzzwords over outcomes, you get a misallocation of capital. The antidote to that bureaucracy is forcing theoretical academic projects into the harsh light of practical business ecosystems. And interestingly, we are seeing those practical bridges being built in geographies that legacy tech media completely ignores.
Which is a perfect pivot to Egypt. So I
Yeah.
was blown away by this dispatch. IDIDA, the Information Technology Industry Development Agency in Egypt, and the global innovation platform Plug and Play just concluded the Aswan Bootcamp series.
This is a textbook study in aggressive tech decentralization.
Right, because when you think of the Egyptian tech scene, you naturally think of Cairo. But this initiative secured an estimated 200 million Egyptian pounds in investments for 61 startups. And it happened in Upper Egypt, specifically in Aswan and neighboring governorates.
Yeah, getting out of the capital.
They are actively expanding the innovation economy beyond the traditional saturated urban centers.
The mechanics behind this are crucial. Geographic inclusion isn't just a feel-good political talking point. It is an economic imperative. ITA actually had to step in and fully fund this program when expected external funding shifted away.
Oh, I didn't realize they fully funded it.
They did, and that shows a profound structural institutional commitment. They understand a fundamental truth. Human talent is distributed perfectly equally across a population, but opportunity and capital are aggressively centralized.
That's a great point.
By building a nationwide network of what they call digital Egypt innovation hubs, they are systematically activating a massive, previously invisible talent pool that the global market desperately needs.
And we are seeing that activation of new talent pools happening across borders, too. Look at the Tech Bridge event that just happened in Warsaw, co-hosted by Milia Cree and Pro Progressio. This event brought Polish IT leaders together with African tech leaders, specifically focusing on partnerships with Kenya and Ghana.
This represents a monumental shift in how European business views the African continent. For decades, the narrative was unfortunately paternalistic, focused on traditional development aid or raw resource extraction.
Right. Very outdated models.
Now it is transitioning into a peer-to-peer partnership based on technological agility and human capital.
Yes. The entire focus of the event was on agile IT talent and rapid team scaling. It's a brilliant synergy. Polish IT companies have incredible experience and established pipelines delivering software to stringent Western European markets.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, the African tech markets offer blistering speed-to-market delivery capabilities and a young, rapidly growing, highly educated digital workforce. It is no longer about outsourcing for cheap labor. It is about partnering for speed.
And we must also look at how talent is being optimized closer to home within Europe itself. Because while we talk about finding new talent pools, some countries are just vastly better at utilizing the talent they already have.
Yeah, let's talk about Latvia.
Eurostat recently released data showing that Latvia currently leads the entire European Union, with 50.9% of its scientists and engineers being women.
That statistic is incredible. For context for the listener, the EU average is only 40.5%. Latvia is literally leading the continent in gender parity in STEM.
And it is critical to understand how they achieve this because it is not a statistical anomaly. Latvia has consistently ranked at or near the top of this metric for years.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Since 2008, the overall number of women in science across the EU has grown significantly, up to 7.9 million. But Latvia's sustained leadership is deeply rooted in socioeconomic history. They inherited a system that heavily emphasized practical technical education across the board.
Okay, that makes sense.
But instead of letting that system stagnate, they modernized it for the digital age without losing that baseline of parity. They have proven that regions can actively win the global talent optimization race simply by ensuring they utilize 100% of their population's intellectual potential, rather than systematically sidelining 50% of it.
Okay, so we have this incredibly dynamic picture. We have global tech bridges finding and nurturing brilliant talent in Silesia, in Aswan, in Kenya, in Latvia. But if you take a step back and look at how companies actually hire this talent on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
well, the system is fundamentally broken.
It is entirely collapsing under the weight of its own digital efficiency.
Which takes us right back to the scenario I posed at the very beginning of this deep dive, the silent crisis of application inflation. We have a devastating new report by Jubal that outlines exactly what is happening. Over the last 5 years, the number of job applications submitted per single job posting has surged by 300%.
300%. It's wild.
We are literally getting 3 times as many CVs as we did half a decade ago.
But the quality of the applicant pool has not tripled. What we are witnessing is the friction of the job hunt dropping to zero. Because it is so easy to apply with a single click on platforms like LinkedIn or Reel. Indeed, candidates are spamming their resumes to hundreds of companies.
Just firing them off.
Right. The high volume of applications, which used to be a statistical advantage for an employer, has mutated into a severe operational bottleneck.
And it's a bottleneck that actively punishes the company because of what the Jubal report calls the 72-hour rule. Here is the brutal reality. The absolute best candidates, the talent you actually want to hire, are most active and receptive within the first 72 hours of submitting an application.
That window closes so fast.
It does. If your HR team is doing things the old-fashioned way and it takes them 5 days to manually screen those 300 CVs just to find the top 10, you've already lost. By day 5, the top candidate is already in a second-round interview with your competitor.
This systemic failure is forcing a radical reevaluation of the fundamental mechanics of recruitment.
Right.
The old models was biographical. You looked at a resume as a historical document.
Right.
You looked for a title, say, 5 years of experience as a warehouse manager. But that title tells you nothing about their actual capabilities in a modern digitized environment. Jobal advocates, and we are seeing this across the industry, a transition to deconstructing roles into their absolute atoms.
Skill-based hiring. You stop looking for the job title and you start looking for the atomic elements of the job. You don't ask for a warehouse manager, you ask for someone who can manage SAP EWM. And for the listener, SAP EWM is Extended Warehouse Management. It's an incredibly complex, high-end software module used to run massive logistics hubs.
Exactly, very specific tools.
You look for the atom of SAP EWM proficiency, paired with the atom of ability to lead a team of 20 people through a high-stress night shift.
Exactly. You isolate the required skills, and then you completely flip the funnel. You front-load the skill verification. You do not wait for a human interview to figure out if they know SAP EWM.
Right, because that takes weeks.
You deploy automated AI-driven skill assessments the moment the application is submitted. This filters out the spam immediately and shifts the entire labor ecosystem from a slow job ad market to a hyper-fast skill matching market.
I want to pause here because this sparks a thought. If we think about the modern recruitment funnel as a giant AI-powered spam filter, where the employer is ruthlessly filtering out 300 CVs, just to find the core atoms of a productive worker, aren't employees doing the exact same thing to employers right now?
Ooh, how so?
Specifically when it comes to where they physically do that work.
That is a highly perceptive parallel. Yes, employees have developed their own experiential spam filters, and they are deploying them ruthlessly against the physical office.
We see this documented perfectly in a massive new report by ISS titled The Workplace Revolution. They surveyed the landscape and found that 81% of employees are currently operating in some form of a hybrid work model.
81%.
But the absolute kicker of the report, the data point that should make every CEO sweat, is that mandating office attendance absolutely, categorically fails to increase employee engagement.
Mandates are a blunt instrument. They might successfully increase physical bodily presence in a chair, but they breed deep, simmering resentment.
Yeah, people hate it.
The psychology of the modern knowledge worker has fundamentally shifted since 2020. Prior to the pandemic, the physical office was viewed as a mandatory operational reality. It was just where work happened. Today, the office is evaluated by the employee as a strategic productivity tool. It is a choice.
They are filtering the commute. If I'm an employee, I'm only going to endure the traffic and the cost of commuting if the physical office offers me the atoms of a superior work environment.
Right. What's the ROI on my commute?
Exactly. I need high-end collaboration spaces. I need access to spontaneous knowledge transfer. I need acoustically isolated, deep focus pods. I need genuine team culture. If I walk into the office and it's just a sea of sterile cubicles where everyone is wearing noise-canceling headphones on separate Zoom calls, my filter catches that. And the next day, I stay home.
This elevates the role of workplace leaders, from simple facilities management to experience design. They are no longer just managing desks and square footage. They are managing a complex, interconnected system of human experiences.
A huge shift.
Every single touch point matters. The journey from the reception desk, the acoustic quality of the meeting rooms, the frictionless interface of the presentation technology, the quality of the coffee, all of it must combine to provide a superior, undeniable experience compared to the employee's home office. If it falls short, the commute is perceived by the employee as a hostile tax on their time.
So, if employees are treating the office as a high-end experience that they have to actively choose to consume, companies are realizing they have to radically alter their physical spaces to earn that commute. They have to build spaces that justify leaving the house.
And that realization is driving a complete reimagining of commercial interior architecture.
Which is fascinating. We are literally seeing the rise of the office as a showroom. I was looking at the case study of what Plan B Group just executed for the ABB office in the Meriton building in Poznan. They took a 400 square meter space and totally redefined its purpose. It isn't just a place to put laptops. It is a living, breathing, building automation showroom.
They made the invisible infrastructure visible.
Yes. In a normal office, you hide the electrical switchboards, the server racks, and the building automation sensors behind drywall and ceiling tiles because they're considered ugly. Plan B Group did the opposite. They exposed it.
Oh, very industrial chic.
Yeah, they treated the walls and the ceilings as a literal stage for ABB's own technology. The client wanted a space where visiting partners and their own employees could physically touch, see, and test smart building systems in a natural environment. It functions as a daily workspace, sure, but it's also a high-end training environment and a tech demonstration facility.
It is a profound shift in utility. The office is justifying its physical existence by offering a tactile, immersive experience that is fundamentally impossible to replicate via a remote video call. And what's crucial is that this commitment to high-end, purposeful physical space is extending deeply into environmental and ESG compliance as well.
Right, because Plan B Group also handled a massive refurbishment for MSA Safety's Polish headquarters at the Atrium Centrum building in Warsaw. We are talking about a 1,200 square meter space, but they executed this overhaul utilizing a strict zero-waste strategy.
Which is incredibly difficult to do in commercial real estate. How did they achieve it?
They systematically recovered and reused existing materials instead of sending them to a landfill. They preserved and repurposed the structural glass partitions. They saved the existing ceiling grids. They even industrially cleaned and reused the existing commercial carpets to aggressively minimize the carbon footprint of the build-out.
Wow. But crucially, they paired that environmental frugality with a massive state-of-the-art technological upgrade to the HVAC system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Yeah.
They didn't just reuse the old vents, they installed highly advanced internal and external units to allow for precise individual temperature control in every single room of that 1,200 square meter space.
Which is honestly the holy grail for employee well-being. If you've ever worked in a corporate office, you know that nothing causes more passive-aggressive Slack messages than the thermostat.
Oh, absolutely, the thermostat wars.
Half the office is shivering in parkas and the other half is sweating.
It sounds trivial, but empirical data shows that acoustic comfort and thermal comfort are the two primary drivers of employee satisfaction in a physical workspace. By offering hyper-localized climate control, paired with flexible architectural layouts like the mobile glass walls they installed that can instantly turn 3 small conference rooms into a large town hall space, the office transforms from a static, rigid container into a highly responsive tool tailored to human needs.
But managing these hyper-responsive, high-tech tools is becoming an operational nightmare. It's incredibly complex. Skanska just selected ISS to manage the technical infrastructure of the Studio A building in Warsaw. For scale, this is a 27,000 square meter building.
That's huge.
Yeah. Facility management isn't just a guy with a master ring of keys and a wrench anymore. They have deployed a dedicated team of engineers using advanced operational data analysis, monitoring thousands of sensor points just to keep the smart lights, the advanced HVAC, and the green tech running efficiently.
Facility management has elevated from routine, reactive maintenance to proactive, strategic business continuity. The technological density of a modern Class A office building requires specialized oversight to ensure that the promised showroom experience never falters for the tenant.
But here is the stark reality. Not every building is a Class A tech showroom located in a prime city center. This desperate flight to quality by companies trying to lure workers back is creating a brutal, tearing divide in the commercial real estate market. We see this crystal clear in a report from AXIMO on the Krakow office market for the end of 2025.
Right.
On paper, it was a banner year. They hit record leasing activity, 270,000 square meters leased. But underneath that headline number, a massive chasm has opened up.
They are describing a true two-speed market.
A completely bifurcated market. In the Krakow city center, the vacancy rate has plummeted to just 6.4%. Demand is huge, space is tight, and there's massive upward pressure on rents. But if you look at the non-central zones, the older office parks out in the suburbs, the vacancy rate has skyrocketed to 22%.
That's a rough number.
That is nearly a 16 percentage point gap. So let me ask you, if I'm a landlord who owns a 10-year-old office building outside the city center and I'm staring at a 22% vacancy rate, what on earth is my move? Do I have to take out a massive loan and turn my suburban building into a zero-waste tech theme park just to get people to show up?
That question represents the existential dread of every non-central commercial landlord right now. The short answer is no. You can't build a theme park because you don't have the capital. Your only viable move is to compete on extreme, radical flexibility. Well, tenants in the city center are willing to pay premium rents, sometimes pushing 20 euros per square meter or more, because they are buying prestige, location, and the ultimate talent attraction tool. Landlords on the outskirts simply cannot compete on prestige. They must compete by fundamentally altering the lease mechanics.
Shorter leases?
Yes. They have to chop up their massive floor plates to offer smaller, modular units. They must offer highly flexible, short-term lease agreements, perhaps transitioning into co-working or managed office formats. They have to provide heavy financial incentives like extended rent-free periods or massive fit-out contributions. If a suburban landlord tries to maintain the rigid, traditional 5-year lease structure of the past decade, their building will sit empty and slowly decay.
Wow. So while the traditional non-central office buildings are struggling desperately to find a pulse, there is another type of non-central real estate that is absolutely exploding right now. I'm talking about the massive buildings sitting even further out on the highways.
The physical footprint of the internet.
Exactly. We're talking about the logistics and warehouse boom. This is the unglamorous back end of the economy, and it is absolutely on fire. Let's look at the sentiment coming out of MIPM 2026. And for the listener, MIPM is this massive, extremely influential global real estate event held annually in Cannes, France. It's where the biggest institutional money in the world goes to decide where to park their billions.
The real heavy hitters.
Yeah. And the consensus from Cannes is that Poland has officially emerged as a primary strategic anchor for institutional capital in Europe.
Institutional investors are waking back up after the high interest rate freeze, and they are hungry for yield.
And what they're exclusively hungry for right now is long-term, single-tenant warehouse assets. According to an incredibly detailed XXIMO report, Poland's industrial and logistics market hit its third highest take-up in history in 2025, reaching a staggering 6.64 million square meters of leasing activity.
That is a colossal amount of concrete.
Yeah, it really is. But here's the paradox. While demand was near record highs, the new supply of warehouses dropping onto the market fell by 35%, hitting its lowest level since 2016.
This divergence, high demand but plummeting new supply, is a classic textbook indicator of a rapidly maturing market. During the pandemic e-commerce boom, developers were throwing up speculative warehouses everywhere, assuming someone would lease them.
Just building boxes in fields.
Exactly. That era of explosive, speculative building has cooled down significantly, replaced by a phase of extreme financial discipline. Today, due to financing costs, developers require 40 to 50% pre-lease commitments from tenants before they will even bring a bulldozer to the site.
So what happens to the tenants when demand is sky high, but nobody is building new space unless it's already half rented? The answer is renegotiations. A mind-blowing 52% of all take-up last year, that's 3.46 million square meters, was just companies renegotiating and extending their existing leases.
Which tells a very specific story. It means that the tenants who locked in their 5-year leases during the chaotic boom of 2021 and 2022 are now facing expiration, and they are choosing to stay put.
Right.
When new space is scarce and expensive, the sheer physical and operational cost of relocating an entire automated distribution center outweighs the potential benefits of moving.
It's like playing a high-stakes, incredibly fast game of logistics Tetris. Developers won't drop new blocks onto the board without pre-leases, so tenants have to perfectly slot themselves into the existing spaces, slightly modifying what they have through renegotiations, rather than relying on endless new speculative builds.
Tetris is a good way to look at it.
But despite that constraint, there are still massive new deals happening, especially when you look at the regional hubs. Look at the Odry region in central Poland. Demand there spiked by 17% year over year, which crushed their vacancy rate down to 7%.
Yeah, they are practically full.
In Rakow, Panettone, the massive industrial developer, secured a deal with Sellpy. Sellpy is a digital secondhand clothing platform, and they just leased a monstrous 38,000 square meter distribution warehouse at Campus 2.
It highlights how both re-commerce, the circular economy of secondhand goods, and traditional e-commerce are incredibly insatiable consumers of physical space.
And what's interesting is that Panettone is targeting BREEAM, excellent certification for that facility. For context, BREEAM is a premier global sustainability assessment method for master planning projects. Excellent means the warehouse isn't just a metal box. It's highly energy efficient, manages water sustainably, and minimizes environmental impact.
It's all tying back to those ESG goals we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And it's not just the mega retailers driving this. We are seeing it across the entire supply chain. Belpol, which distributes doors and flooring, locked down 5,600 square meters in Kobyłka, just north of Warsaw. TVM Group, a major logistics operator, expanded their network by 10,000 square meters across Gdańsk, Pruszko, and Godki, specifically for cross-docking operations.
We should define cross-docking, because it is vital for understanding modern supply chain speed.
Please do.
In a traditional warehouse, goods arrive, they're placed on racks, stored for weeks, and then eventually picked and shipped. Cross-docking eliminates the storage phase entirely. It is the logistics terminal where materials are unloaded from an incoming semi-trailer and moved directly across the dock to be loaded into outbound delivery trucks, with zero or absolute minimal storage time. It requires flawless logistical choreography, and it is entirely about maximizing velocity.
And the advisory demand required to orchestrate all this velocity is intense. We saw news that HSI Immo recently promoted Claudia Markowska and Jakubo Terra to associate directors specifically to manage the surging, complex needs of clients in the Mazowiecki and Udodu markets. You need serious expertise to navigate a market this tight.
Without a doubt.
But let's look at the financial architecture underneath this physical boom, because total investment volume hit 1.5 billion euros in 2025. And a massive chunk of that was driven by something called sale and leaseback deals. When I first read about this, it felt, kind of counterintuitive. Why would a successful manufacturing plant give up ownership of its most vital physical asset just to become a renter? It seems like a massive risk to lose control of your own building.
On the surface, it seems risky. But financially, a sale and leaseback is a brilliant strategic maneuver to release trapped capital. Think about it this way. A manufacturer's core competency, their actual profit engine, is making things, whether that's car parts or consumer electronics. Their core competency is not real estate speculation or property management. By selling their facility to an institutional investor, they unlock a massive, immediate influx of liquid cash. They then immediately sign a 10 or 15-year lease to remain in the exact same building. The operations don't skip a beat. But now they have millions in cash which they can use to invest in R&D, automate their production lines with robotics, or simply build a war chest to weather economic uncertainty.
Ah, okay. That makes a ton of sense.
Meanwhile, the institutional investor at MIPM gets exactly what they wanted. A high-quality physical asset with a stable, proven, long-term tenant already locked in place.
What's fascinating to me is the massive contrast in our conversation today. We spend so much cultural bandwidth obsessing over the flashy, zero-waste tech showrooms in the city centers. But the actual back end of the modern economy, the massive, sprawling warehouses for secondhand clothes, the high-speed cross-docking hubs humming at 3 a.m. outside Poznan, this is the physical infrastructure of our digital lives, and it is quietly dominating commercial real estate.
It is the unavoidable physical manifestation of digital commerce.
But managing this colossal logistics network, alongside thousands of hybrid workers who are ruthlessly filtering their office experiences, requires absolutely bulletproof IT infrastructure and flawless financial plumbing. If the plumbing breaks, the whole system floods.
Which brings us to our final and perhaps most critical area of analysis. The prevailing tech ethos of the last decade was famously coined by Mark Zuckerberg: move fast and break things. I think it is safe to say, based on the March reports, that era is officially dead.
Completely dead. We are entering an era of intense, almost uncompromising IT pragmatism and financial compliance. Let's look at the IT side first. There's a fantastic interview with Igor Miller, the CEO of Covent IT, a major technology consultancy. He explicitly states that there's a massive shift in the market from scale to selectivity. Companies are not necessarily slashing their IT budgets, but they are demanding absolute ironclad predictability from their vendors.
He astutely noted that the MVP, the minimum viable product, is no longer an acceptable excuse for a messy, chaotic launch.
Exactly. In the past, you could launch buggy software, let the users find the flaws, and patch it on the fly. You can't do that anymore. Cybersecurity threats and strict data regulations simply won't allow it. As Miller says, good delivery today is not a sprint, but a train running on schedule. Business impact, maintenance costs, and risk mitigation matter exponentially more than sheer implementation speed.
And this demand for extreme IT predictability is colliding head-on with an absolute avalanche of new financial and regulatory automation requirements. Look at the push for automation in corporate finance. A firm called Clearsulting is executing massive implementation projects using platforms like Blackline for intercompany clearing and Workiva to automate ESG reporting.
And we should clarify what they are actually reporting because it is staggering. They are mapping over 700 different sustainability metrics across global frameworks like the CSRD and the ESRS.
For the listener, those acronyms represent the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the European Sustainability Reporting Standards. These are massive new European directives that fundamentally change how business is done.
It's not just PR anymore.
Not at all. They force companies to prove their environmental and social claims with hard, auditable financial data. You can no longer just put a green leaf on your website and say you are eco-friendly. You have to prove your carbon footprint using software that integrates directly with your HR platforms like Workday and your supply chain metrics.
But here's the problem. Digitizing all of this mandatory compliance is incredibly messy when it hits the real world. Just look at the ongoing chaos in Poland right now with the KSEF rollout. KSEF is the National E-Invoicing System, a massive government initiative to digitize and centralize every single B2B invoice in the country.
It is a prime, painful example of digital growing pains.
It is causing absolute nightmares for accounting departments. While the core government system hasn't totally crashed, companies are dealing with the plague of phantom invoices. Here is how it happens. A vendor issues an invoice. The government's KSEF system receives it, assigns it an official KSEF tracking number, and sends back a success message. But the recipient's accounting software literally cannot see the invoice. It vanishes into the digital ether.
This systemic failure typically stems from deep ERP integration issues. ERP being enterprise resource planning, the massive software ecosystems like SAP or Oracle that run a company's operations. The communication bridge between the business's ERP and the government's API, the application programming interface, fails.
Never the smallest things.
Right. It could be due to a microscopic token authorization error or a tiny formatting glitch in the XML file encoding.
But the real-world consequence of that tiny XML glitch is catastrophic for operations. It forces companies to create a dual document flow just to survive. If you are a micro business, you might receive an invoice through the KSEF portal. Then the vendor emails you a visual PDF just in case the portal fails, and they might even mail you a physical paper copy because nobody trusts the system.
Which is chaos.
Total chaos. If you don't have a massive, highly sophisticated accounting department to untangle those three documents and realize they are the same bill, you risk double deducting your VA tax. And if you do that, the tax authority hits you with severe financial penalties. It is a system that actively penalizes the smallest players who lack the IT infrastructure to automate the chaos.
And the regulatory scrutiny isn't just focused on small invoices. It is being applied to massive corporate debt structures. The Transfer Pricing Forum, the FCT, recently issued new, highly stringent recommendations on intragroup financing that heavily mirror updated OECD guidelines. Historically, if a massive parent company wanted to loan money to its own smaller subsidiary, they just needed a relatively simple benchmark study to prove that the interest rate they charged was roughly in line with the open market.
But the FCT says that simple benchmark is no longer enough to protect you from an audit?
Not even close. Tax authorities are now aggressively performing what is called debt capacity analysis. Before they even look at the interest rate, they're asking a fundamental question. Could this specific subsidiary actually afford to take on this much debt if it went to an independent third-party bank?
And if the answer is no?
If the tax authority determines the answer is no, they have the power to recharacterize the entire loan as a capital contribution. That fundamentally alters the subsidiary's tax liability and completely throws out all the interest deductions the company was planning on. Furthermore, auditors are now scrutinizing implicit support.
What does that mean in practice?
It means that a subsidiary of a massive, famous global group inherently has a higher credit rating simply by association, even if the parent company hasn't signed a formal financial guarantee. The market assumes the parent will bail them out. If you are a corporate treasurer and you do not precisely calculate and price that implicit support into your internal intra-group interest rates, you will fail a transfer pricing audit and face massive fines.
It sounds suffocating. But there is a tiny glimmer of hope for the smaller businesses who are drowning in this. We also saw news regarding the rollout of the new ISA for LCEs. That stands for the International Standard on Auditing for Less Complex Entities. The global auditing bodies are finally recognizing a basic truth. You cannot effectively audit a small, agile, less complex business using the exact same massive, resource-heavy, bureaucratic framework that was designed to audit a multinational conglomerate.
It is a desperately needed return to scalability and proportionality. It allows auditors to focus on the actual, material financial risks of a smaller company, rather than forcing them to comply with a blanket, one-size-fits-all bureaucratic framework that drains their resources without adding any actual security.
Okay, we have covered a staggering amount of ground today. If you are listening to this on your commute or at your desk, what does this massive web of information actually mean for you? If we step back, we are witnessing a massive, historic paradox.
A paradox of speed versus compliance.
Exactly. On one hand, we are deploying technology like AI to move incredibly fast. We are shifting from return on investment to RTI, return on time invested. We are slashing software MVP times from months to hours. We are using digital twins to physically re-architect defense factories and increase production by 30% in just 6 weeks.
A profound, unprecedented acceleration of human and corporate capability.
But on the exact same timeline, the physical, regulatory, and IT realities are pulling in the absolute opposite direction. We have KSEF phantom invoices threatening tax audits. We have transfer pricing authorities demanding complex debt capacity mathematical proofs. We have ESG laws forcing companies to track the carbon footprint of their recycled office carpets. We have IT leaders demanding that software delivery be a slow, methodical train running on schedule.
Right.
All of these forces are demanding absolute caution, meticulous documentation, and total predictability. They are forcing the economy to slam on the brakes. Are these two forces, the lightning speed of AI and the grinding friction of compliance, just going to violently collide and crash the system?
I would argue they are already colliding, and the sparks are flying. Mastering this specific agonizing tension is the defining business challenge of 2026. How do you harness the terrifying, frictionless speed of AI while simultaneously building the strict, predictable, heavily documented governance structures required by modern regulators? You cannot have speed without brakes, or the train derails completely. But if your regulatory brakes are too tight, you stall out, and you lose that 800 billion euro tech race to the US and Asia.
That is the perfect encapsulation of the challenge. Let's briefly recap the massive journey we've been on today. We started high up with the surprising optimism of U.S. executives, and we explored how AI has effectively killed the era of the fully independent startup, pushing the market toward internal entrepreneurship and corporate collaboration.
Right, the mall analogy.
Exactly. We then traveled to the dynamic regional tech hubs, from the post-mining digital twins in Silesia to the massive geographic tech decentralization in Upper Egypt to Latvia's incredible 50% parity in female STEM leadership.
All amazing talent stories.
From there, we looked at the brutal hiring crunch. We broke down the silent crisis of 300% application inflation, the terrifying 72-hour rule, and how both workers and companies are deploying experiential spam filters to break jobs and offices down to their raw atoms.
Changing the very nature of work.
We toured the new physical reality of business corporate offices, transforming into zero-waste, climate-controlled tech showrooms in the city centers, while a historic, highly disciplined logistics boom fills massive cross-docking warehouses out in the suburbs.
The physical internet.
And finally, we look deep under the hood at the strict, unforgiving new rules of IT predictability, phantom invoices, and complex financial compliance that are desperately trying to keep the whole machine from spinning out of control.
It is a highly complex, occasionally contradictory, but ultimately deeply fascinating global ecosystem in the midst of a massive transition.
It really is, and I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Okay, let's hear it.
We saw today that modern HR departments are desperately trying to break human jobs down into precise, measurable atoms of technical skills, like SAP EWM proficiency, just so they can filter the noise and hire the right person in 72 hours. But simultaneously, we are building autonomous AI agents that can learn and replicate those exact technical behaviors in seconds.
That's a scary thought.
If the ultimate driving goal of modern business is now RDI, return on time invested, what happens in 3 to 5 years when the time required to deploy an AI agent to execute a complex technical task is effectively zero?
Yeah.
Will human technical skills still be the core, tradable atoms of the global economy? Or will human trust, human judgment, and genuine, unfakeable human relationships become the only premium commodities left in the business world?
That is the vital existential question for the next decade of work.
I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit the Focus on Business portal.